This is my hardtail, because the rear doesn't really do much. It's like another hyper hardtail with a better motor than Project Banshee, a bigger fork than Project Banshee, which it needed to do trails like this, and more stylish, less ergonomic handlebars.
What up, YouTube? It's your boy, Mr. Ocelot, back again with another Walmart e-bike creation. I started with a $1,500 Hyper E-Ride dual suspension mid-drive mountain bike from Walmart, which is a $1,500 e-bike, and souped it up with some parts that I had in my garage. Took many of them for my other project bike that I was calling Project Banshee, and I got a couple new bits as well. I'm calling this bike Project Bougie Bushings, or Project Bougie for short.
No, not Buju Banton.
So why did I call this bike Project Bougie Bushings? It's because of these bushings, the suspension pivot points. Here's Project Bougie next to my Cube Stereo Hybrid 160, which is my performance mountain bike. And when you see the two bikes side by side, you can kind of appreciate some of the similarities and differences between the two. The rear suspension design especially is pretty different because, of course, the stock Hyper E-Ride dual suspension comes with these bushings in the suspension. They're almost just like bolts like you would find at Home Depot, whereas the Cube has definitely a more robust design. It's got these thick bushings in the pivot points, and like here's an example underneath the shock, and here's the Hyper version of that. Of course, this being an aluminum framed bike, there's a lot of welds. I'm not sure what this weld is. That looks like a pimple or something. It's $1,500 bike, the quality of the welds, I mean, they're not going for German precision or anything. And then the Cube, of course, has a carbon fiber frame, so no welds on that baby. My Cube is an XL frame, which I think is 21 inch from the bottom bracket to the top of the seat tube. Whereas the Hyper is a medium frame. I think it's 17.5 inches from bottom bracket to seat tube. So it does feel smaller. The reach is smaller, which is, you know, not so great for a guy of my size. But I'm able to make it work. I've only ridden this bike like 40 miles so far, and already I can say that like this rear suspension is maybe like the Achilles heel of the bike, and maybe is not even worth the cost or the complexity to implement on a bike like this. It does have a 38mm shock, which, you know, like those Trek bikes, they only have like a 60mm shock. But the suspension design here, you know, with the Trek, the suspension kind of multiplies the amount of travel of the shock through the geometry of the rear triangle. So that 60mm shock on, say, a Trek Fuel EXE will get you 140mm of travel at the wheel, whereas this guy, with its 38mm of travel, honestly, it kind of feels like a hardtail. It's like very, very low rear wheel travel. You know, I'm glad it's there, but is it worth the engineering complexity and like the creaks and moans that I'm getting from these pivots and this weak ass welds over here that I'm trusting my safety to? Yeah, arguably not. I'm glad that Hyper did it, because they can say that they've done a full suspension bike, and maybe they do a nicer bike next time around. But I would say this rear suspension is an Achilles heel of the stock E-Ride, whereas the mid-drive is, I think, a big strength. This Vinka mid-drive, I'm really happy with it. It just feels very intuitive and natural. It's not like shooting you forward when you don't want it to, and it's also very responsive though. And that's because it uses a torque sensor. So I'm a big fan of this Vinka motor. I bet it performs as well as a Trek Fuel EXE motor. Of course, that Trek Fuel EXE is like a lot lighter and probably better engineered than this plastic Chinese mid-drive motor. But on a $1,500 bike, I'm really, really happy with that motor. So another note about these Hyper E-Rides is the engineering tolerances are, I think, a little looser than you would find on like a German or European or even American manufacturer. And as an example of that, I already showed you like those welds, but check out this top tube arrangement. As you can notice right now, I'm pretty well centered over the bike, and the top tube is just a little bit over to the left. And I measured out using a caliper the kind of distances here from the edge of the weld to the edge of the bike, and yeah, it's definitely off center. I went on the Hyper E-Ride owners Facebook group, which is a really awesome group to check out, and did a little informal poll of other mid-drive owners, and yeah, like I think most people, was it like 6-3 or 7-3? Most people with this bike have the same exact off-center top tube. So I was kind of wondering, could that be related to the fact that the motor also is asymmetric? So the motor is sitting a little bit to the left, as you can see here. There we go. So maybe having a little bit extra weight on the left where the motor is at the bottom bracket, maybe Hyper decided to have a little more weight in the top of the bike by the top tube. I'm not sure. If anyone from Hyper wants to respond to this video and let us know, that would be awesome.
Should you do these upgrades to your stock Hyper E-Ride mid-drive full suspension? Good question. I guess I'll go by them one by one. Should you replace the stock parts? Should you upgrade them when you need an upgrade? Or should you just pass?
So what's up with this fork, you might say? And why are the stanchions yellow? Well, this is for the people who can't quite swing a $1,000 Fox 36 fork, but who do have access to $144 for this 140 millimeter travel 36 millimeter stanchion fork. So how did I choose this fork? Well, like I said, I was looking for a budget option, and I was looking to kind of give the bike a little bit of a color pop with the orange pedals and the orange fork and orange mudguard. So yeah, this baby has rebound adjustments, many adjustments for all of these dials, by the way, and of course compression. The infamous Chinese fork sticker, use only for cross country and all mountain, not enduro or downhill, and definitely not for S-Stream downhill, ES-Stream downhill. I do like the color. It's like a very bright orange, but yeah, it's like I mentioned, it's a 36 millimeter stanchions, which they let you know about right there with the Arabic numerals, as well as written on the inside of the fork. Just to let you know. Boost, yeah, a lot of forks have the boost method of, I think that's related to the hub, right? But they don't necessarily put that in the biggest letters on the side of the fork, but whatever, we'll go with it. Of course, the Fox 36 come with a anodizing process called Kashima, which I guess that makes the metal stronger somehow. It ionizes the metal, I'm not really sure. Here it looks like some guy in the factory just dropped a gallon of yellow number 5 into the mix. The head tube angles, I used the Android app bubble level to measure those. So that's the angle from the that the fork is going up relative to the ground. And the Project Bougie bike now has a 62-degree head angle, which is really good for, it's slacker and it's better for descending. Whereas my Cube has a 63-degree head tube angle, which is great. So the front ends are pretty similar.
I'm liking this fork so far. It's 140 millimeter travel. Now I'm kind of wondering if I should have gone for the 160. I was concerned about messing up my geometry, but I'm realizing now that if you don't want your handlebars too high, you can just not get riser handlebars.
In order to accommodate the fork, I had to get this FSA headset because the fork is a tapered fork. It's wider on the bottom down here than it is up here. And the stock fork was a straight fork. So you're basically extending this head tube using this cap, and then the fork goes in there. So FSA headset, and coming up to some carbon handlebars that I found on Amazon. And what's nice about these handlebars is they have this integrated stem. So it's kind of fancy and harkens back to that Fuel EXE that I've had my eye on.
So descending, what I'm noticing is these handlebars, I really want riser handlebars, or at least like higher contact point because yeah, these handlebars have no rise to them, and it's leaning forward more than I want to be. I want to lean back more if I can. Luckily the frame is small enough I can just get my butt low, get my stomach into the seat, but yeah, I don't really like these handlebars. They look cool, but I want to have riser handlebars.
Other cockpit items, I got these Lycron ergonomic horn grips that I'm really liking. I have these on 2 bikes now, and they're really cheap. So that's another Amazon purchase that I can recommend. What else do we have new? Oh, so to accommodate the fork, it's using a through axle, as you can see. So I wasn't able to use the stock wheel off of the E-Ride. So I picked up this Shimano Deore XT wheel. I want to give a shout out to my bike mechanic, Dietrich Zocker, out here in San Diego. Dietrich's the man, because he pretty much told me that like my projects are always the most interesting, the most difficult. And for a bike mechanic, it's not necessarily the cool stuff that's the most difficult. In my case, both my last 2 bikes, Project Banshee and this one, Project Bushi, the most difficult part was getting this rear wheel to seal with tubeless sealant on this seam. So if you're trying to set up your Hyper E-Ride to be tubeless, it is possible, but what you got to do is basically load it up with tape on the inside, including on the sidewalls, and then fill it up with air, and hopefully it fills. One thing that I've done in my home setup is I have an air compressor now instead of an air pump, and that does a lot better job of getting a bead on a tire. Brake wise, we got 203 millimeter brake rotors on there, and those are hydraulic Tektro brakes. These are, you guys have seen these before off of Project Banshee. And out back, those brakes go to a 180 millimeter rotor. And why did I go to 180, you might ask, when I already had the 203 millimeter rotors? Well, if you go with any bigger of a rotor than 180 out back on these E-Rides, you might have an issue with frame clearance.
I don't think you need to spend that much. You can probably cut corners if you want and get like a no-name, Chinese brand from the same factory as Shimano. But make sure if you're on the trail, they're hydraulic and they're four-piston, because you just get a lot more braking surface, better performance, and bang for your buck, honestly. Again, like, it's about performance, right? Like, not getting that forearm pump and stopping quicker and having more modulation. So for all those things, definitely upgrade the brakes to hydraulics.
The drivetrain is SRAM, so I got a GX shifter up here, going back to a GX derailleur, and I believe that might be an NX cassette, but I'm not sure. Anyways, it's a 12-speed that goes all the way up to a 51 tooth, and just gives me a lot more climbing range than the stock E-Ride. I think probably the stock E-Ride's lowest gear is probably something like this guy, but here on my cassette I got 2 more gears, 2 much larger gears to help me with climbing. And that's good because the chain is basically in the middle of the range of the cassette most of the time, not all the way on the lowest gear.
In addition to having more range, this cassette and shifter and derailleur setup, it also just like shifts snappier, so it's like smoother and faster to shift. So it's not just the range that's the performance, it's also the shifting performance. I would say that's more of an upgrade you don't have to do that right away. You know, I was going up that hill, we just went up. I did that on the stock drivetrain, and it was just a little bit easier with my upgraded setup. If you don't want to drop 200, 300 bucks on a SRAM or Shimano setup, you could, again, like, I think I saw some setup on Amazon for like 90 bucks. I'm sure that'll be fine.
Dietrich did install a dropper for me, so I got this OneUp remote lever going through the frame. Where does it go? Oh, yeah, through the frame. We drilled in there. You'll notice the black touch-up paint where the frame was exposed metal. But yeah, through there, coming out through the hyphen and the E-ride. Thank you, Dietrich. And coming up to my 100mm seat dropper that I had on Project Banshee. Let me see if I can engage it for you. There you go. And that's really nice because when I'm descending, I can kind of slam the seat all the way down and get my body off the bike without the seat being in the way. And then when I'm climbing, I can extend and get full extension on my legs for maximum power for pedaling. All right, guys. Well, I got about 10 miles on Project Bougie so far, and I think that's enough to share my initial impressions. I really like the upgrades I did, and really happy with the bike for the price I paid. But there, I think, are some lessons learned, and hopefully that can inform any upgrades that you're going to do to your budget mountain bike, whether it be a Hyper E-Ride or another one. So the first one is this is a light eMTB. It's not going to keep up with a full performance eMTB like a Cube Stereo Hybrid, but it will keep up with a lightweight eMTB like a Trek Fuel EXE. At least that's my guess based on what I've heard. It's got a similar battery size, it's got a similar motor, but it is a lot heavier, and the rear geometry is not nearly as robust nor performance oriented. But the fork, when you throw a $144 Himalo fork, aka knockoff Fox 36 from AliExpress on your $1,500 bike, well, it really helps it. It doesn't look as good as a Fox 36, but it also costs like less than 1/5. So I'm pretty impressed with this Himalo fork so far. I never would have considered a Chinese knockoff fork like the Lutus and the Bucklos, but I saw a YouTube review of the Himalo downhill fork, which is a what do you call it, dual crown downhill fork that Himalo makes, that Wolf Tick Nation did on YouTube, and it looked pretty promising. So I thought, that's interesting. And then I saw this orange monstrosity with the fake Kashima coating, and I thought, well, $144, that's like what I pay for a service on my RockShox 35. So not really, but 1.5 services. So I mean, for $144, I could just get a new fork like every year. And maybe I'll end up doing that because I don't know how robust these Himalos are, and it doesn't come with a seal kit. I didn't see a place to order a seal kit. What parts can you use on there? I have no idea. The Fox mudguard, it did not fit. The holes didn't line up right, so I had to just drill through it and jerry-rig my own holes. But got it to work, and yeah, I'm happy with the fork so far. I kind of peeked at the ShockWiz report halfway through my ride, and it looks promising, guys. I would say, if anything, just go for the 160. It's not too much for this. Maybe you adapt your handlebar situation to accommodate that much travel and that much additional length on the fork. But yeah, 140 is not too much. I could go to the 160 for an extra 20, 30 bucks, I think it was. What else? The brakes. You gotta get good brakes for trails like these where they're really steep and you don't want to just pump out your forearms. You want to get a dropper post so you can get your rear end over the rear wheel. And the one thing I would not get again are these handlebars. So these carbon handlebars, they look really cool. They look kind of like the, you know, with the integrated stem and everything. But my problem with them is there's no rise. So it changes the geometry. It has me hunched more over the front wheel, and I don't like that. So I didn't see any carbon handlebars with rise. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is just buying some new aluminum handlebars with a normal stem. All right, guys, I hope you like this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Peace.